Welcome everyone to my latest Pillars of Eternity min-max character creation guide. My name is Macsen. In this video we're going to be taking a look at the Chanter class, and specifically we're going to be taking a look at a Chanter that really focuses on range and causing as much damage per second as possible. You can actually make a more melee focused Chanter, and I'm going to be going into details about why I'm not such a big fan of that a bit later on. Now, first things first, let's mention some of the basics about the Chanter. So the Chanter is in the same basic class group as the Paladin and the Priest. They're a support type role of class. You can see a bit of their backstory here. Their starting abilities, they have phrases and chants. All chanters can continuously speak chants made up of magical phrases. Phrases produce passive effects and help build a chanter's power until they can use an invocation. Invocation, powerful magical effects that chanters can create after they have spoken a required number of phrases through their chants. So they kind of work very much like the caster classes, the classes that are capable of casting spells like the priest, the wizard, the druid, and the cipher. But it works in a bit of a different way with them. They can't do it immediately, at least not with the invocations. They have to build up, as it suggests here, before they can use the more powerful spells. And that does have drawbacks, but the Chanter is a very strong class, and in fact in recent patches Obsidian have been nerfing them a bit, which I'm going to be going into details a bit later on as well. So their starting skills, they have +2 in lore and +1 in mechanics, and their basic stats, they have very high deflection. That's actually the joint most in the game, and you'd actually definitely think that would make them a very good melee build because of that. Accuracy, 25, the most is 30 of course, so it's almost the maximum. Now their endurance and health is kind of at the midpoint out of all of the classes. There's 4 classes which have a higher amount. That's very much the frontline classes: the Paladin, the Fighter, the Barbarian, and the Monk. And the Chanter comes in just behind that. So you definitely would think that this would make a good frontline build. But I really don't think they are, at least not on Path of the Damned. I think you can probably get away with it up to hard difficulty. The thing is, with these stats, even if you maximize your constitution, say have 20, at level 12 you'd have less than 900 health, you'd have about 870 I think. I think that's too little for a frontline class. Also your endurance wouldn't be that great either. I think it'd be about nearly 200. I can't quite remember the maths here, but yeah, I don't think it's enough health to really do well at Path of the Damned. You can make a melee type build, and in fact I will be using this guy melee a certain extent with using his pike after he's fired off his guns. But yeah, I don't think the Chanter's amazing at melee. You could have it in a third role, melee role, like if you see my sweeper fighter build, you could have it in a type of role like that. But the Chanter really doesn't have any talents that are melee focused at all. Also, another drawback of having the Chanter as a melee build is you can't move him around so easily, and a lot of his invocations require him to be mobile. And if you're going to focus on lore as well as your skill, using scrolls, you kind of need to be mobile as well to put your Chanter in right position. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend the Chanter as a melee build in, well, at all really. You can definitely go it though if you want to. But yeah, attributes, let's have a look at them. So by far the most important attribute for the Chanter in my opinion is intellect. That's why I've selected Old Veiler as the culture. Gives an extra intellect point. So you need this for all of the chants, the invocations, both area of effect and duration. Now you can see that Obsidian have recommended Constitution and Resolve. Now these are very much for a melee type build, but as I mentioned, I don't think the Chant is particularly amazing at melee. By far the second most important stat in my opinion for the Chanter would probably be Might. Now Might, the healing part, there is actually a healing spell that the Chanter can use. I think it's only one. and you wouldn't necessarily always take it, so it's not that important might for that. But a lot of their invocations and chants actually do damage, so you want to really maximize this. And of course, if you want to maximize your damage per second, you need might as well. So I'd probably rank that as the second most important attribute unless you're going for a melee build. Dexterity, all DPS builds need this. More quicker you attack, the more damage you're going to do. And then after that, at least for a range chanter, the other attributes don't really matter all that much. I'm going to be using gunpowder weapons, so interrupt really doesn't matter what's at all really. But deflection and reflex are probably the first and second most important defensive attributes, so that's why I've put so much into perception. You could definitely minimize this. I can't increase my might to dexterity and into any more than I've already have done, and my remaining points are going into constitution. If you were going to use the chanter as your player character, then maybe you would want some resolve, but yeah, I wouldn't be using this build as a player character probably. So, on to race. Now, the reason I've picked the Islander Mauer, well, first of all, it increases the might, a very important attribute for this build. So I'm looking for anything that increases my maximized attributes here. Also, it gives you, the Islander Mauer gives you an extra weapon set, so I can fire off my guns, another gun before engaging with a pike, basically. And a pike is a reach weapon, so you don't have to be directly engaged with an enemy. And there's a talent as well which works for arquebus and pike. It's the soldier talent, which I'm going to be picking a bit later on. So if you weren't going to pick the Islander Mauer, the Godlike gives a point extra in intelligence and dexterity. The Death Godlike would be okay. I kind of think it works a bit better with less damaging weapons, and the arquebus is very damaging, so I'm not sure it works particularly well with the Death Godlike. And also you can't wear helmets, so that's a drawback. The Wood Elf wouldn't be bad, an extra accuracy bonus at range. Other races, they don't really work all that well. You don't really need the defense of prone attacks, since you're not going to be directly engaged with anyone in theory, or at least not very often if you're playing well. Dwarf has a lack of dexterity, which is a downside. Boreal Dwarf has a really hefty accuracy bonus, but it's only against those two types of creature, and that's not going to be much use either. So I think I would probably either pick the, well, if I was going to use guns and a pike, I would pick the Islander Mauer. And if I was going to, say, use a bow and maybe a quarterstaff combination, I'd go for the Wood Elf. I'll mention a bit more about that later on now. So the chants that I've picked, let's have a look at them. You get to pick 2 out of 5 phrases initially with the chanter as well. You get to pick one more at the level 1 level later on as well. I tend to prefer the more defensive picks here. There's actually only really 2 offensive picks. This one lowers concentration of enemies, which means they're basically easier to interrupt. I don't like that one particularly. There's that one which does a constant endurance damage to enemies as well. So that could be pretty good actually. But yeah, as I mentioned, I prefer the more defensive picks. So this gives extra fortitude and will. That gives extra move speed. And that gives extra or less slash and pierce damage to your party members. I'm going to be mentioning much more about chants a bit later on and showing them off in a combat example though. So I'm going to pick those now. And the invocations, which is what the chant is really all about. Now, a lot of these are actually pretty well balanced. I would, certain of these I would pick dependent on who else is in your party. I'm going to be mentioning a bit about all of these later on. The one I'm going to pick straight away now though is the Phantom. This is probably my favourite pick here out of the lot. Phantom's particularly strong opponent. You basically summon this, so this Phantom becomes on your side and attacks your enemies until it's killed, or you cast another summon spell. So it's got really good range. These phantoms can take a bit of a beating. They engage directly in melee combat, which is pretty important. I'll be mentioning more about that later on. And they have attack that freezes their enemies or stuns them, something like that, which is particularly good as well. So that's my favourite pick out of a lot, and I'll, as I mentioned, be talking more about them a bit later on. The actual background I've picked is artist. Our starting skills were lore and mechanics. Now, a lot of the scrolls in the game are actually abilities that the wizard, druid, and priest has. So, focusing on lore with the chant is a pretty good idea since you can give them spells that they wouldn't normally be able to cast. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on skills-wise. Let's take a look at the chanter's skills, talents, and abilities now then. Okay, skills. I think I'll do the skills at level 12, which is what I usually do. I'll invest the points then and discuss them a bit. So let's move on. Invocations. Now we get to pick a further 6 invocations. They're spread out over 3 different levels, and at this level we get to pick one invocation at the level 1 phase. Can't quite remember at what levels you get to pick them. I guess we'll see coming up though. So let's take a look at this invocation first of all. So this invocation works over quite a large area of effect. It's a big cone, and this works by reducing foes' damage reduction. So basically every time you do damage against any of the opponents affected by this, you'll be doing an extra 5 damage if you hit them first of all, and if they have a DR of 5 or more. So this could be pretty good actually. I think it's particularly good if you have a lot of party members that attack very quickly. That's how you can get the most out of it. So, and of course you need your enemies to have some DR. If your enemies have a DR of 0, this is going to be absolutely worthless. But I think, yeah, that's a pretty decent pick. Skeletons, summon skeletons. Now skeletons are a bit fragile. The problem with this spell as well is, I think it's okay spell first of all, but you have to build up your chants level to actually cast the invocations in the first place. You have to, and that takes some time. I think this works particularly well when you're up against numerous opponents, not very good at numerous opponents. But the fact is, since it takes a while to build up your chant in the first place, this isn't going to be arguably too useful in preventing enemies from engaging your weaker party members, preventing them from doing so. The skeletons kind of work as a speed bump. They're not particularly strong at all. They go down very easily. I think this is an okay spell, but I much prefer the Phantom. It stains around a lot more and does a lot more damage, but that's definitely useful in certain circumstances. All of these spells are, in fact. There isn't really a particularly massively weak one. This spell, so it has a cone air of effect again, half decent range with our intellect. You can start to see why intellect is so important here. Now this one basically increases your damage reduction to slash attacks, and also very much so against shock. So it's a very defensive spell. Not a massive fan of this one, but could be useful in certain circumstances. Now these two spells are actually very similar. The Thrice Was She Rond one has slightly more range, and that is shock damage. This spell does exactly the same amount of damage, but it's crush instead. But this has an added bonus of pushing back opponents and stunning them for a certain length of time, but the range isn't quite as good. Now in a previous patch, Thrice Was She Rond, I think in the last patch of the beta, this was nerfed a lot. It was actually an absolutely amazing invocation before. Now it's not bad. I wouldn't necessarily pick this, but it's not a bad pick at all. And I think, yeah, picking either one of those is probably a decent idea, in addition to a couple of the others. This one, it's actually quite hard to get this one to work. I've tried it out in the last version of the beta, the last time I tried it out. You have to use it against dead enemies, and that does a huge amount of crush damage to nearby opponents, I believe. But you have to actually kill someone before you can actually get it to work in the first place. I haven't really, well, I haven't tested it out recently. It could be pretty good now. I don't know. You'll have to test it out yourself to see if you think that's good or not. So all of these are good in certain circumstances. There isn't really a terrible pick here in my opinion, although I think that's the one I dislike. But even that is pretty good in certain circumstances. So yeah, pick whatever you like here. That's what I would recommend, to be honest. I'm gonna go for that one. This one, if you watched my Barbarian build, I would actually quite recommend this with that Barbarian, since the Barbarian is doing extremely quick attacks that aren't massively damaging. This would work extremely well with that Barbarian build I did. So yeah, I'm going to pick that with that Barbarian in mind. Talents. The Chanter actually has the least specialized talents in the game, I think, specifically to do with them. But they're pretty good. The Chanter actually allows, it basically is a healer in many ways. So it increases the endurance of the rest of the party members, and this is affected by the might uh, stat as well, I think. So I actually forgot that earlier, but that's a reason to maximize your might, definitely. So this gives an extra endurance point, so I'm not sure how quickly it is. Every half second, every second. And the intelligence is also boosting the range, so this will keep your party going basically if they're taking damage. So I'm definitely going to pick that. Level 3. Now we get to pick an extra level 1 phrase at this point. I think I mentioned earlier on I prefer the more defensive picks. So I would either probably pick that one here or that one. So it's kind of up to you again here what you prefer. I'm going to pick that one now. The level 3 chants are very offensive, so I prefer to pick the defensive ones earlier on. And we've got another level 1 invocation here, so pick whatever you like basically. I think I'll pick that one, but it really depends who's in your party, what I would pick here. The next talent, Beloved Spirits, this actually got nerfed recently in the most recent patch, so it gives an extra bit of endurance added onto your Ancient Memory ability, but it's a really tiny amount. It's probably still worthwhile picking, but not definitely. So on to level 5. So I actually don't like the level 2 phrases at all. It's really important to mention that how quickly you're able to use the invocations is based on how quickly you're chanting, and the chants are your phrases basically. Now the level 1 phrases are the quickest of all, so if you only use the level 1 phrases, then you'll be able to use the invocations quicker. So, and that's actually quite a decent strategy to employ. So a lot of these maybe, well, first of all, they aren't that good in my opinion, a lot of them. And it's a drawback that you'll be only able to use your invocations after a lengthier amount of time if you're actually using these phrases as well, which is quite a drawback. Now this first one, this one frightens your opponents. It doesn't actually give you much details apart from that. I think all of your chants are probably the same area of effect, I guess. Yeah, it probably is. Based on your intelligence as well, that probably increases it. So, lots of other companions classes are able to frighten opponents as well. So if you have another party member that can frighten people, then this becomes an even worse pick. It could be okay if you don't have anyone capable of frightening anyone though, which you probably will have someone in your party who is though able to do that. This one is a defense against frightened and terrified attacks. I think this one's okay pick in very certain circumstances, but still nothing special. This one works in a very strange way. I haven't really tested it out very much at all, to be honest. It causes freeze damage and hobbling. I think they have to move over the trail of frost that your party member leaves to do that though. It's probably quite hard to actually get them to trigger that or move on to where you've been. Maybe. I don't know. I haven't tested this one out much at all though. It could be decent, to be honest. You'll have to try that out for yourself. This one's actually been nerfed in a recent patch. I think the reload speed was a lot better before. I actually quite like this one. if you have a lot of ranged party members in your party, especially if they're using the reload type weapons, then this is particularly good. Yeah, that's pretty much the only level 2 phrase I particularly like. And this phrase, this is an extra, well, your opponents have less accuracy when you disengage, which isn't particularly amazing really. So I'm going to pick that one here. And on to level 6, so we get to have a look at the level 2 invocations here. Now we've got 2 summon spells here, Worms and Will of the Wisps. I don't particularly like either of these, to be honest. The Worms are it's like a type of mini dragon. They have a fire breathing effect that targets reflex, I believe. Now they can't actually engage in melee combat, which is a downside. You can't really tie up opponents with these. So that's yeah, as I mentioned, quite a big downside. You get 3 of them though, which is pretty good. But I'm not a big fan of that spell, to be honest. Will o' the Wisps, I don't think they engage in melee either, actually. They do some kind of shock attack. They might engage in melee, I can't quite remember. They have the ability to confuse opponents as well, I think, which Confuse is a very powerful ability, which I've been realizing recently. I recently did a Cypher build where I didn't pick Tenuous Grasp, I think. I'd actually recommend you pick that these days, because Confuse is amazing. Yeah, Will o' the Wisps, not a big fan of them either, to be honest, at this level. I much prefer the Phantom pick from level 1. There's more summons, invocations later on that we can pick as well. I'm going to be picking one of them, definitely. So the other picks, there's actually 3 picks here which are pretty similar in my opinion. So you've got Paralyze, it's another cone ear of effect. A lot of these you can see have these cone ear of effects, and this is why having a ranged chanter is probably better over a melee build, because you need to move him around to actually put the cone in the right position a lot. So this is similar to this one as well. That's Charmed instead, but it has a lot less range, and Charmed is basically taking over opponent. Paralyze, well, you can guess what that does. You can see there in more details. And also there's another one, Terrified. So they're all reasonably similar. Terrified lowers accuracy. There aren't too many sources of Terrified in the game, but is this a better pick than, say, Paralyze? I'm not so sure in my opinion. I think I prefer, out of the 3, Paralyze. Although Charmed you can definitely make a good case for. If you have other party members that are capable of causing any of these afflictions, and you may want to not pick some of these because of that. Now the last remaining pick at level 2 is this one, Shatter their shackles, cast off their chains. Now the problem with this is you have to get to level 4 in terms of chanting before you can cast any of these level 2 invocations, and that takes time. And by that time, a lot of the enemies would probably already have basically affected you with these afflictions. They would have already cast these, so because of that, I don't really like this one either. So it's quite a hard pick here. Personally, I would pick one of those 3, and I probably prefer the Paralyze one. And even though I don't like this one, I might still pick that just because I don't like the summons at this level, to be honest. So let's pick the Paralyze option here. Okay. And talents. Now you can see here we've already run out of our class talents. Now, as I mentioned earlier on, I think Soldier is the best pick here. So we can use Arquebus's Arbalist, which is a massive type of crossbow. You may actually want to use that instead of the Arquebus potentially. And the Pike, which is a reach weapon. So we're going to be using those 3 weapons, and as I was talking about earlier, if you were to go for the Wood Elf type build with the extra accuracy, I might actually go for this, a Quarterstaff and a Hunting Bow. The Hunting Bow I would probably pick, which one is it? Penetrating Shot maybe, to give you an extra damage, but it makes it slower. This with soldier pick and arquebuses and the extra weapon picks, you're basically going to be firing off these weapons and then switching over to a new weapon. Now that's quite very heavy on micromanagement. So people who don't like micromanagement may prefer the wood elf peasant pick, I think, instead. But I think this build is better than that. Yeah, for this talent though, I'm going to be picking soldier. And let's move on. So we've got another 2 level phrase. So I think I'm going to pick that one here. But as I mentioned, I don't really like any of those. And we get to pick another level 2 invocation here. I think I'm going to pick that one. And on to the next talent. So I'm really going to maximize my weapons here, my firepower. So I'm going to pick weapon set, I think. So we can have 3 arquebuses in this situation and a pike. So you fire off your 3 arquebuses and then move in with a pike. That's basically what I'd be doing in combat. So on to the phrases. Next level 3 phrase. So you've got 2 extremely damaging phrases here. I would probably definitely pick one of these. This one adds extra burn damage to your allies' weapons. So that could be a particularly good pick, especially if you've got a very melee, quick attacking party members. I think that would be a particularly good pick. This one does massive amounts of burn damage and slash damage. These numbers seem extremely high as well. But if you use your level 3 phrases, it means your invocation's going to take longer before you're able to cast them, because these take longer to chant. So let's pick, well, let's show the other 2 first of all. This one, that's extra defense. So that could be alright, to be honest. It's against certain afflictions. And that one is extra deflection. So yeah, as I would pick one of those and then one of those for this for these phrases, and it's kind of personal preference really. Let's pick that and move on. And now we get to pick a level 3 invocation. So we've got 6 picks here. We've got 2 summon spells, the Drake and a couple of ogres. Now I believe the Drake, not 100% sure on this, I think it's like the worms, that they are basically a attack via range, but this is basically a dragon, or it's a really big opponent, does a lot of damage. I prefer the ogres though. I think you get 2 of them first of all, and they engage directly in melee. They do massive amounts of damage. So yeah, I think I prefer them. I would definitely pick one of these for a level 3 invocation, I think. And looking at the other ones, this one is a healing spell. Basically revives people within that cone area of effect. There are a couple of other classes that are capable of doing very similar, well, reviving people. I think the priest and the paladin can both do that. So if you have a priest or paladin in your party, you may want to not pick that, potentially. Although this is a particularly good one, actually. Then you've got these 2 invocations are reasonably similar. They have similar length. They increase your stats of your party, basically. Extra dexterity into that perception in that case. Might constitution resolve. I'm not going to go into too many details because you should know what all of these stats really do anyway, or you can find out. And the last pick that you can pick from here, this causes a massive amount of freeze damage. It directs 7 bolts of freeze and ice in 7 directions. Now, it only works on foes, luckily. I'm not sure if that was always the case, I can't quite remember. But yeah, I quite like this spell, but it can be tricky to actually maximize the damage and the amount of hits you do. So you have to really move your chanter into the right position to make the most out of this. So let's pick the ogre one first. And more talents. So I think I'm going to pick the 2-handed weapon one here. Extra damage. We're using all 2-handed weapons with this guy, so definitely pick that. And we've got one more phrase to pick. So whichever one of these you want, basically, I would go for here. Having already picked an offensive one, doesn't really matter, really. And level 12. So let's do our skills here. So definitely maxing out in lore. Probably don't need that much. Not actually sure what the highest level of scroll is in the game, what rank you need to be, but let's assume it's 12. So let's put 12 into that. We've got 30 points left. And I think I'd split the rest between potions and athletics so you don't get too tired in combat. This guy, arguably, you might need a bit of stealth if you want to sneak up on your enemies and fire off your gun straight away. But I don't think I would use stealth in the parties I use personally. I'd have him further back in the party. But you may want to invest in that. And under certain circumstances, you may even want to invest highly in mechanics. But I don't think I would do that with a chanter in most circumstances. And last invocation, let's pick that one. These could be pretty good, potentially. Haven't really tried them out much, but yeah, I think I'd go for the damage one here. And the last talent pick, so what should we go for here? I think deep pockets might not be such a bad pick. Extra quick item slots, you could have more scrolls, more potions. Quick switch. That wouldn't be terrible, perhaps, since you're switching over your firearms all the time. There's Marksman if you wanted extra accuracy on your guns, that's particularly good. If you didn't want to use your pike at all, you could have the extra reload speed, the extra gunner one. Penetrating shot, I'm not a big fan of that because the arquebuses do a huge amount of damage already. I don't think you'd really gain much out of that, slowing down your attack speed. Yeah, I think let's pick Marksman, but any of those, yeah, there's a few picks here that might be pretty good. Okay, so let's have a look at a combat example using this build. Okay, so this is our finished level 12 DPS range chanter with all the picks that you saw me making earlier on. I'm going to be massively over leveled for this combat example, but it shouldn't really matter too much. You can see that the chanter gets this unique graphic down here, so this is its chants. And basically, you can see here the invocations as well. You can only cast these invocations when you build up a certain chant level. So this number down here changes when you complete the chants. You need to be able to cast the level 1 invocations, you need to get up to level 3. And the level 2 invocations, you need to get up to level 4. And the level 3 ones, you need to get up to level 5. And this number is reduced back to 0 after you've casted these invocations, as long as it's not bugged, which it used to be in the back of beta a bit. So let's take a look at the chants as well. So you basically prepare your chants here as kind of a chant book of the known phrases. So let's try one out here. So those two are our level 3 ones. Let's pick a level 1 chant and a level 3 chant here. Now you can see here, that's the duration, how long it takes to actually cast the chant in the first place. So if you're using these level 3 or level 2 ones, it's going to take longer before you build up enough chants to cast the invocations. That's why it might be a good idea just to use level 1 chants in certain circumstances, although some of the level 3 ones are particularly powerful, and I quite like that level 2 one as well. So you can see also that they have duration and linger amounts. So the duration, I believe, is the amount of time it takes to actually cast the chant or phrase in the first place, and the linger amount is how much extra length this works for on your party members or opponents. And you can also see that that one starts to be cast when the linger amount kicks in. Now I think your intelligence does affect this a bit. I'm not 100% sure now. I guess we'll see shortly. So what I'm going to do is use this chant 4 here. Now you prepare your chants basically dependent on what enemies you're facing. Now, for example, say you're up against opponents that do pierce and slash damage, you would want to use that. You'd want to use that if you've got a lot of range weapons in your party. This one, if you want to cause damage, then use this. There's all certain circumstances where you'd want to use certain chants. So let's pick level, that one is it? Where is it? Chant level 4. And you can see there the influence, your intellect is affecting that, how the range as well. So let's pause combat. I'm going to get this guy involved here, and I've taken off his weapon so this combat will last longer.
What is it?
I'm going to bring him forward. I'm not going to use weapons yet. I just want to show off the chants. So you can see here, they're starting to be cast.
I feel alive.
And that one's done. So you can see here, that lasts for 4.9 seconds.
Feel him.
And you can see here that that one's actually kicked in as well now. So they're both working in tandem. Problem is that that one is going to run out before we're able to re-chant it. And that's can be quite an issue with how the chanting system works. So in actual fact, you may actually only want to be casting one type of chant at any one time, because there is some downtime before you can next chant that next phrase. Now it is possible to actually increase your intellect over the 20 amount. Mine is 19. In theory, you could potentially chain certain chants to last continuously. Two chants overlapping each other, but I think if it is possible, it's particularly hard to do. So in terms of how I would use this guy in combat as well, let's actually show off his weapons. So basically I would fire off my arquebuses. Oh, actually before I do that, let's show off the invocations. So you can see here that's gone up a number. So I'm actually going to switch to that one as well, because it's all level 1 chants, so we get it quicker.
Crave, I feel alive. Feel him.
So he's cast that, he's up to level 2. You can see here I still can't cast that. Now I can cast it though. So I can cast at this stage any of these spells. So for example, let's cast a Phantom. And let's show off the Phantom. So where's the Phantom hits in there? Yeah, it does freeze damage, and he has a special attack as well. I'm not sure if you get to see that though. And hits with additional effects, so stuns them. So it's particularly good, the Phantom, definitely one of my favourite pick.
What is
for the early levels. Let's build up our chants again, show off something else. So you can see this takes quite a while. It's not immediate by any sense of things. So that can be quite an issue. We're up to level 5. Let's show off the ogres. Now if I use these ogres in combat, it's going to absolutely wreck that guy. So I think I'll show off, well I will show it off an ogre in combat, but first of all let's show exactly how I would use this guy in combat. So I would fire off my arquebuses. Does large amount of damage, and then you switch over to the next arquebus, fire that off again. Takes a while for some reason, this one, not sure why. And you switch again, fire again. And remember, the chanter is healing everyone in the party continuously as well. He's probably healing this guy. So once you've fired off your arquebuses, you can either stick with an arquebus, or you can switch to the pike and move the guy in and get him involved in combat, and set your summons in as well.
So much for you.
Okay, at this point I think I'm going to have to call it an end of the video here. I'm not going to cover all of the chants and invocations, it would just take too long to do all of them. I think you've probably got a pretty good idea of how the chanter works though from watching this video, and from how this build works as well, hopefully. You'll have to let me know if you think that's the case by giving me some feedback. If you have any comments or questions as well about this video, please ask away. If you have an opinion on something or you want to see a certain class build video in the future, please let me know. I'm going to be making more Pillars of Eternity class builds, min-max builds over the next week or two at least. So if you request something, then I'll probably cover that first over the other classes. Right, if you fancy helping me out as well, you may want to give this video a like or maybe even share this video. I really rely on the search rankings, YouTube search rankings, and that really helps out with that, attracting new people to the channel. So I'm really grateful to those of you who help out in that way. I'm even more grateful to those of you who check out my Patreon page. That's the biggest way you could help out with the channel. If you became a patron of mine, that's a way you can have more say over the content on my channel as well. So if you're thinking about maybe becoming a patron, please do so, or maybe even let me know if there's a way I could potentially improve what I'm offering on Patreon. If you like the content on my channel as well, you may want to consider subscribing. That's a way you can find out when my channels are out as well via the subscription feed. And there's plenty more Pillars of Eternity content. There's a playlist for this video with other character creation guides. There's Pillars of Eternity Let's Play I've done, and there's tons of strategy game Let's Plays that you may be interested in as well. And I may be covering some RPGs other than Pillars of Eternity as well in the future too. Right, I think I've covered everything I wanted to, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.